Listen to this, kids. Hi, my name is Oskar Offermann. I'm a DJ since 15 years now, probably, professionally. I did my first party in 2003, went to high school in Frankfurt, and then I moved to Berlin in 2001, and then it happened very quickly that I got involved with electronic music. Some dark club somewhere, and there were obviously some crazy energies going on. My musical development was very normal for someone my age. I was born in '81, so I was skating, listening to punk rock, and then I started getting involved with some smoking substances, and then I put the skateboard in the corner, and then I started listening to hip hop. And I remember being a hip hop kiddie, and I always thought, like, is strange with techno that they have like a kick drum on the clap or on the snare, so on the 2 and the 4. I moved to Berlin, and then I was stemming in a techno club, and suddenly I was like, oh fuck, I understand. Like the energy of the kick drum was driving me so much and hitting me so deeply that I was really like, oh, this is so nice. And this was basically like the moment I really realized it. But before, I went to Robert Johnson here maybe once or twice when I was in high school still. And there was but more almost drum and bass, I think. Yeah, there was these drum and bass nights, and I think Arno actually did a drum and bass night there, or he was playing there as Chopper was his name, his drum and bass DJ. I mean, I was always interested in music and playing music, playing in bands and instruments and producing hip-hop instrumentals. And when I moved to Berlin, it was quite a natural development, moving on from over maybe a breakbeat, short breakbeat trip-hop phase to 4 to the floor eventually. And then it happened, like I remember, like I did my first party on the 3rd of March in 2003. And this was more like a small, more for experimental electronica and stuff. And this was like the very first time I also started DJing actually, but it was really small and, like I said, more experimental electronica. And then slowly after some time I started playing more floor-orientated stuff. And so it has been actually 20 years if I'm thinking about it. Yes. It's weird now to say this, like after like so much time, and because it was still in a time where there wasn't like any information easily accessible. But I did it like a lot on my own. I didn't have many mentors or anything. It was just like me and my MPC, and then figuring it out. And if I think about compared to the time today, like how long it took to get a proper beat going, it was like 2 years or something, you know. Today you just go on YouTube, watch a tutorial, and you're done basically, and you're set up. There were a few people friends, like Edward, for instance, was a very early friend of mine, and we both sort of started simultaneously producing music maybe, or producing techno and house, and more house in those days. And yeah, it was more like my surrounding and the people I started working with when we started doing a label also. That was also quite influential, yes. Very, very first release I did was on Nick Höppner's, and the band they had was called My. So Nick Höppner's label, he was a resident at Panorama Bar, old Panorama Bar, new Panorama Bar. And I gave him like a CDR, I think, or something. And then it was called Just, the label. And I don't know if it aged well, to be honest. So if you listen to it now, be aware, it might be shitty. But anyhow, this was the first, it was called Arabian Pleasures. And then after another release somewhere, I started basically running my own label very early, which was called White. And then we started doing that. And then the very first release which took off was Fog Burns Off, which was a proper full 12-inch with 3 tracks, and it got picked up by many DJs. And that was like, wow, yay. That was the magic, the threshold maybe, you know. So there was pretty good times actually. That must have been 2010-ish, around that time. So basically, yeah, you see, like from 2003 to 2010, it was also took some time to basically really get established at some point. And from then on, the gigs also started rolling in at some point, which was nice, of course. We were very influenced by deep house stuff, which we liked a lot, like the old Dixon stuff maybe, or maybe even, what else did I like in those days? John Daly, more like a little disco-orientated early drum poet things I like. Even early Perlon stuff. Ricardo also was popping up around that time, I think 2007, 8-ish, something like that. So there were a lot of influences, and of course the whole minimal thing started developing in a different direction with Perlon and those people. I think that was interesting also. So, but for us it was basically deepness. We were looking for deep sounds like STL, Melchior. Those kind of things were heavily influencing us. I think basically Minus and Perlon sort of, it developed at the same time, but maybe in those days, still also early days of internet, it wasn't like the informations were so easily accessible. So maybe I discovered it maybe a little bit later or something. I also remember some stuff from Switzerland from that time, or even or early like Luciano stuff was really amazing in those days. I also remember that, like discovering that, and I was like blown away. It was like on Klang Electronic, which is also a Frankfurt label from that time, Roman Fliegen and those guys. Yeah, there was many interesting things happening. Plus also in those days, 2000, after Richie Horton came, like there was like a lot of people coming to Berlin suddenly, international artists, all these English-speaking artists. You could also see the same scene changing because everybody started speaking English at some point, like in record stores and stuff like that. It was quite normal that people started speaking more English everywhere, you know. So that was, I guess, a big development. You know, it happened even before the millennium, I guess. Like even mid 90s, there were also like a lot of people coming in. I mean, Berlin always was quite attractive for people from the outside. Like in the 80s, it was a lot of like German guys, because you could basically like could not get drawn into the army, you know. So people moved to West Berlin in those days. Then in the late 90s, because of techno boom and Love Parade, there was also like a big sense of like craziness going on, but I wasn't there. I just, you know, also just read it and saw documentaries and stuff. And then like when I came, I guess it was always more and more, even with the electronic music. And then, I mean, even to this day, I would say it's still getting more and more people are interested in this, and the scene gets so much bigger and so much also, I hate to say it, but commercialized also in a way, of course, because it's these masses of people which come in there every weekend, you know. So you have to sort of give them something, sugar for the, that's a German saying, sugar for the apes. Those places, they also live from the tourism, of course, you know, it's a mixture of both, I guess. But I think this place and some other places also kept their sort of like identity and also are still very popular with locals. But I haven't been living in Berlin for now 6 years, so maybe I'm also like the wrong person to ask. I got bored at some point with Berlin. After 15 years of Berlin, 15 years of the techno scene, conquering it all, playing all the big clubs, like every, like, you know, sort of, you know, you work your way up until you play Panorama Bar. We started playing like Panorama. I think we closing it even on New Year's, which was the 4th of January or something like that. Panorama Bar, which was quite amazing. And, you know, and then at some point I was just like bored with the sound or with the scene. I had a feeling like here in Offenbach, there was more developing. There was more futuristic sound of techno, sort of a new minimal something, which was very funky, which sounded very organic to me, and still. And I also like made friends with these guys, and they became very close friends of mine, plus a relationship of mine separated. So I thought it's a good time maybe to move back to this area. And I haven't regretted actually. Is really nice. Also having Robert Johnson is like, you know, from my place is a very, very short walk. Plus they made me a resident there, so I cannot complain. It's all good, you know. Yeah, it was more common friends, and then Carl Becker, who was one of the founders of Hardworksoftdrink, was together with the roommate of my girlfriend in those days. So we met, you know, so how it sometimes happens. Plus also being from the same area, and you know, there's always, because Frankfurt is not so big, it always seems much bigger, but it's only 700,000 people, is a small big city, you know. So you know, everybody knows everyone, even through the generations, or bigger sisters here, brothers, and you know, it all somehow also Atta managed very well to sort of always channeling everything together for many, many years. So everything had to go through Robert Johnson or his sort of little universe, because he has all these different bars and places and did all these things, you know, with like the web shop or whatever it is, you know. At some point, everybody ended up working there or something like that. When I started going there very frequently, it was more like when I was living in Berlin and I was visiting here for Christmas, and they always had these legendary parties where they kind of also like knew that people were coming home for Christmas or something like that. So on New Year's, or these legendary dates. And so, yeah, I was traveling to Frankfurt like many people do still today for a certain party, you know, at Robert John's. Like the Ricardo dates were always legendary, where everybody went. Or when friends, smaller DJs started playing for warm-up for Ricardo, everybody went. And these kind of things, you know. Oh, that is a complicated one, actually. I have a very, very crazy sleeping rhythm. I usually go to bed around 6 p.m. or in wintertime even earlier sometimes, like when it gets dark, 5-ish, something like that. Then I sleep until midnight. Then I start working on music. Then I prepare stuff for the school because I work as a teacher. And then I go to school, work. It's really mad. And then I come home, and usually after school I don't do much. I'm usually done for the day. So I come home around lunchtime, and then I chill a bit, maybe listen to music again. Like I'm the happiest when I produce a track every day. For me, writing music is more or less like a diary. Sometimes it's not doable because of my teaching stuff. So, and this is like also gives you like almost like depression then sometimes, because I just need this feeling of having the outlet for 1 second, you know. And that is really nice for me. And I prefer to do it also at night, because it's just like you're not distracted and no sound outside, you know, like, because it's also a busy road here, you know, during the day you hear a lot of honking and stuff. So it's really nice to get sucked into it. And I couldn't do it at like in the evening, because I'm just too tired usually, and I'm not an evening person, which is, I know, ironic for being a DJ. But yeah, this is not my strongest hour. The night and day, I mean, in general, is like the yin and yang, you know. Like night is a little bit mysterious, dark, you know, lights are blinking. So I think it suits electronic music just very well, you know. But most people are probably staying awake, I guess. You know, not like me getting up early. I'm kind of obsessed with drum machines, and I used to be a drummer myself, so drums is usually like the first starting point for me. And then usually bass. I try to work the bass really early in stage, but sometimes I get drawn away with some melody parts. And it happens actually quite often to me that I put in the bass at the very last, which is strange, because like you always say, like the groove, you know, is important. This is like the foundation. But for me, sometimes it works the other way around. So I try to basically find a hook, maybe a melody hook before even the bass. Yeah. And then what I do is basically like 3 parts. Is like coming up with ideas, arranging it and mixing it. And I try to do it in one day, basically. So I try to force myself to arrange it like it has to be arranged on that day. Because if I keep on, like, if I don't finish it that one day, I'm gonna end up never finishing it. So I really try to force myself to finish it the one day and have a mix down where I can basically DJ it already. So this is like, even if it's sketchy and not perfect, but it's really important for me to have it like finished like this, because then I have a good sleep afterwards, you know. Can go to bed happy. Nature in general, I have to foster myself sometimes to really just go out and do like something, and listening to music, of course. This is something I keep forgetting sometimes also. Like, I try to listen to music and force myself really to listen to sets. I listen to many DJ sets and try to find inspiring stuff there, and that's actually for me very inspiring. Like, and if don't push yourself. If if you're not getting a good idea or a sketch down, then just go for a walk, listen to some other music. That's usually the best recipe for me. Wow, first time I played there was definitely together with Edward. I remember that. In those days we were playing a lot of back-to-back cassettes. It must have been, I don't remember, probably also around 2010-ish, 11 maybe, something like that. Yeah, magical moment, of course, like going there for the first time. And for DJing, I mean, is, what is interesting about Robert Johnson is I always thought is not as easy as you think it is when you're outside the booth, because it sounds so perfect. When we're inside the booth, is way more complicated. Maybe it was also my stress level in the beginning because I was so anxious. But I really had a feeling is not like the easiest monitoring in the world, Whereas you see, like, I don't know, like the Romanians or Ricardo just partying, and it looks like it's just, looks like it's a piece of cake. But I found it in the beginning quite tricky, to be honest. Yeah. Yeah, I have to say this was also like a big influences from younger friends of mine, which were going to Sunways very early already, like Jakob and Bodin. They were like from Traffic. They were like super early with Sunwaves before everyone else more or less went, And that sounds so corny, but they were like, because they weren't even adults in those days. They were 16 or 17 and went there like to Romania in those days, like early, So it's crazy for German. So they did these things, and those guys, they kind of like influenced me when I met them. They sort of like introduced me to Romanian techno. I wasn't so much aware of it actually in those days. And then I sort of like over them, I saw, I think I found out that in Robert Johnson they have the residency, and it's always this special thing and stuff. But it was also, to be quite honest, in the early days when I discovered this sound, it was way too minimal for me. I didn't get it really properly. I knew my friends really are into it, but we were like so deep into this proper like deep house sound, which was more like maybe like a, let's say, 97 rip-off from Kerry Chandler or something like that. It was very like Rhodes and deep chords and stuff like that. Yeah, sorry, Kerry. I'm basically like Edward, I have to mention for sure. Everybody who was also like involved in the graphic design stuff for the label White was also like Ben, Adam, like they were like friends from my how you say, like my studies. Like I studied at University of Arts, and I studied graphic design in the beginning. Then I have to mention like Hardworksoftdrink people. They became very, very close friends of mine. Traffic guys, Jakob, Julia, Bodin, Martin, and now just recently I started a new label which is called Superflex with Porco Rosso, and he's also like one of my closest friends right now. Yes, that's like, so there's over the years many layers of friends, And that is also quite a nice thing to have. Like even nowadays, old relationships, you see so many people over the years, and if you're in the business for quite some time, you just like know so many people, even like on, I don't know, airports or something like that. Like suddenly Gerd Jansen is standing behind you. Hi! Something like that, it happens all the time. Basically, we went the same, like in Frankfurt, we went in the same area, we went to high schools. His high school was next to mine. So we had sort of common friends. And then I moved to Berlin and he moved to Berlin. And then through some mutual friends, we kind of like connected somehow, I guess. It must have been something like that. And then we quickly became friends because we were both interested in techno and house. He was way more deeper than I was in those days, but yeah, we sort of merged it at some point, I guess. Yeah. There is some plan. There are some plans which I don't want to put out yet because it's not sealed the deal. But I'm talking to some. Actually, it's very funny because I was listening to sets and there were like two guys which inspired me quite a lot with their DJ sets, and they have a sort of distinctive sound, both of them. And then I produced some demos for both of them. And they both replied and want to do a record with me now. So this is the one thing. And the other thing is like I will do a Superflex record for the new label for sure very soon. So this is, and wasn't there some remix? I forgot. I think there's also another remix in the pipeline. I forgot about who it was. So this is the near future. And I have to do a proper mix. Is like the last mix is forever ago. I'm so bad with DJ mixes because it's just like once you press record, it's like shit, and it never flows as smoothly as it should. So yeah, this is also on the list. Little bit trance influence, like proper trance, and little bit electro, but I really like it to sound old school. I don't like so much the modern sounding stuff where there is a few stuff like when I don't know, like there's many, like I'm getting to a point now where I have also trouble following because I'm getting too old. I'm 33 now. So, yeah, 33, 43, sorry. Let's try to make myself younger. 43 now, so basically like it's hard for me to sort of keep up with there's so many artists popping up every time, and it's hard, and if it sounds too modern and too clean, I don't like it. So I like still on analog sounding fat drums, basically the old Detroit 808 909 thing. Yeah, and I like it also to be a little dusty. I like when when the sound isn't too clean and too perfect. That's what I really like. Yeah, and electro-ish. And yeah, of course, now with maybe some Italo influences because it's a little bit the sound of the moment now, but is good. I like it. Is merging a little bit, Because what we are doing now is very interesting because we started Superflex because in Frankfurt there was like a void because something like all these people with their labels left and everything changed here a little bit. So, and or these labels were stopped, like not running anymore. And then we kind of decided like we want to have a new label for Frankfurt, So, and what we are doing now is like super low key. We're doing we are playing have a lot of parties now in super small venues, which are more like pubs or something. So we start really groundwork, really grassroots, really talking to people and starting it from the smallest level and then building it up now. So it's really interesting. We did also one party at a how you say, like a Späti, like a liquor shop where you can buy beers at night. And then we did a party like in a pub now. And it's really cool, like to see it, like to do it like proper, like underground again, like not going directly to a club and just be isolated, just like grow together with the people. So that's like our project for Frankfurt now. So I hope this works out well. Superflex. It was actually quite easy because the guy I'm doing it with, Poco Rosso, Luca, he's a very social person and he's always talking with everyone, always drinking and meeting people. So that was easy actually. We had some trouble like the process of developing like a name, a logo, artwork, and trying different things. And we really wanted to also like keep it just the both of us. We wanted to do it like no other art director, not so many other people involved. So we also like we're both not really graphic designers, so it was kind of like tricky to find something there and develop a logo. We also depending on the help of other people because we don't know how to like lay out a sticker properly that is cut out nicely and stuff like that. So that was a bit tricky, but I think it's paying out now. And yeah, we use Subwax for distribution. Of course, we could have done this also like grassroots appealed by ourselves, but this is like too crazy, you know? Like friends of mine, the Geekling guys, they did it like this, completely everything themselves, like the distribution also with all the shops and stuff, direct mail order and stuff. I mean, I really admire them for doing that like so properly for so many years, but that's too much for me. I still have a proper job also. I think they never had an external distribution company. They always did it themselves, actually, which is crazy. And they also they did like sell crazy amount of copies. I know for sure from Edward, and I'm good friends with Konstantin also. They always had a very, very loyal fan base, which were always, once they put out a new release, they pressed it and pressed it. It was quite, I think, when it's still going quite well. I'm putting out a track on the 10 years Giggling release also, I think. One track, yeah. Weimar, actually, there used to be Weimar, which is a Eastern German town, which is popular for many like art and cultural things, like Bauhaus, like the designers were also in Weimar. Some famous composers and stuff, and yeah, so the German high culture, they say, is very much based there, and they all met there. It's a very small town, and it has a great art university. I think they all met there, more or less. And then they did parties there in a place called Giggling, and this is also, they invited me there very early on. This is how we got friends, like before the label even started. They invited me to play at the Giggling. So I was DJ or playing live or something like that there. And then I invited Konstantin with his project Kettenkarussell, and in those days we did parties at Bar 25, label nights, and they played there, and they were super happy because Bar 25 in those years was like, wow, the crazy shit. And so we became friends over the years. And then this is also somebody I met quite regularly. When I was playing somewhere in the world, suddenly Konstantin was there or something like that. That was really nice, yeah.